Hi, Nitin.
Hello, Joe.
So, thank you for joining us today and the great presentation. On stage, you talked about what advisors need to do to succeed in the digital age. Can you tell us a little bit about what the most important things advisors should be thinking about are?
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, the key point I was making up there was that the wealth management industry is at a point of inflection. Yeah, last 10 years have been great for business, but those good times are not likely to keep going. And advisors have to change fundamentally. We are in the digital age. The This game is fundamentally different, and you need to have new rules. Yeah. So there are five shifts which I believe advisors need to make. The first shift is around the whole strategy, the whole focus, which is from the product to the client. Yeah, that how do you really anchor on the client, and what that really means is that how do you simplify and potentially personalize the experience and offerings for the end client. The second dimension is around the operations. Yeah, that there is something about the better faster, but there is also the faster and cheaper. Yeah, and that's where operations come in. That there is a lot of complexity today. How do you simplify it dramatically, drastically, by an order of magnitude? Yeah, because unless and until you simplify, you will not be able to really automate. Yeah, and my point is that for too long we have lived with incremental changes in operations, and now is the time for operations, end-to-end operations transformation. And the third big shift, I would talk about is that this industry has been very relationship driven. And that's very important, and that has to stay even in the digital age. But this is the age, digital age is fundamentally the age of data. And advisors have to figure out how to harness data effectively. And if you look at the difference between success and failure in this digital age, data is probably the biggest driver of it. Yeah.
Let me interrupt you there for a second because I often talk to advisors about this specific topic, and they feel that, and I think rightly so, that most of their business was built on the customer relationship, the client relationship. What I try to instill in advisors is you can use technology and still have a personalized relationship. Can you talk to that topic a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, technology, data, technology, and relationships are not at odds with each other. They can support that. How is that? Better data can allow you to personalize, to cater the services, the advice more specifically for the customer. End of the day, what is the investor interested in? The investor is interested in better outcomes, and technology can help you do that. Yeah, and what advisors need to recognize is that there's a seismic shift that is going to happen over the next couple of years in who's holding the assets.
Right.
Yeah, because there is this big shift that's going to happen from the baby boomers to the millennials, and they are likely to reassess, how what advisors they are working with and what they need from the advisors. So there is absolutely, in business, relationships will always be absolutely critical, and that's a big strength that advisors have, and that's not going to go away. So nobody's going to take away their bread. Yeah, but there's an opportunity for them to enhance the relationship using technology.
Great. Yeah, I think a lot of advisors think they're mutually exclusive, and I think we firmly believe that's not the case. One complements the other.
And I think what you're doing with the T3 conference, and I was very happy to see the theme that theme is around technology and tools, for tomorrow. I think you have a very important role in evangelizing that. It's a little bit of this kind of fear of the unknown. Yeah, and I think as technologists, we also haven't done a good job of simplifying the technology, because a lot of technology has historically been sold as like, hey, this is a black box, this is like black magic, and you better use it, otherwise you're going to lose out. It's like driven through FOMO, fear of missing out, and which for many people actually works the other way around. You say, oh, I don't know this, I don't know, this is going to take control away from me. Whereas the reality is that technology can empower you. Technology brings transparency, but for that, technology needs to be simplified. Yeah, and I think this conference is a very helpful step towards that.
Well, the good news is we have record attendance this year, and so we're getting the word out to more people. The bad news is these are the people who probably need to hear it the least because it's a self-selecting audience. They wouldn't come to a tech conference if they weren't a little more tech forward. But hopefully these advisors and the other partners we have here can spread the word to the rest of the industry, and that's what we're hoping to achieve. But sorry, I only let you go to point 3. What about point 4 and 5?
Yeah, the point 4 and 5, are more slightly broader. Yeah. So points 1 to 3 were very specifically about, the products and the operations and the technology. Point 4 gets to culture. The underlying, the ethos in this industry has been about risk management. Don't make mistakes. Yeah, we are dealing. It's a fiduciary responsibility. We have to, we have to make sure that we are protecting the assets, and that's still very important. But that mindset also works against change.
Yes.
Because if you are too driven by risk, you don't take, you don't move. You want evidence for everything. You spend a lot of time planning. Now this digital age is not about spending a lot of time and getting things right, because you don't know what is right exactly. Right is not driven by an analysis. Right is driven by an evidence. Yeah. So it is very, very experimentation driven. If you look at the digital natives, they have even taken out the strategy functions, because strategy doesn't really work in this crazy world. It is all about doing it. Yeah. So that's the fourth point, that how do you shift your culture and therefore your processes from anchored on risk management to agile, yeah, experimentation driven. And the fifth point is how you look at yourself, as an entity. Historically, you put a box around it, yeah, around yourself, and that's who you are, yeah. And in this crazy world, this crazy digital age, no one can do it alone. You have to think about collaboration. And it's a funny world, where the boundary lines between competition and collaboration keep on overlapping and often changing. A competitor can become a collaborator, and also vice versa. So you have to think of it as an ecosystem. That as an ecosystem, what is the outcome you're delivering from your client, and you need to think about your boundaries very differently. So that's the fifth shift, from like self-sufficient to very kind of an ecosystem partnership driven play. And that has implications, of course, in terms of how you define yourself, but also in terms of your technology and operations.
So one final question. You talked about these 5 things, and most advisors and most firms need to change all 5, quite frankly.
Yes.
It seems like a very large task.
Yes.
So what you suggested on stage today is go narrow and go deep.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Joel. See, there is too much to be done, and I think that's been the issue. There's too much to be done, and you kind of get lost. That where do I get started from? And that's where I think it's a lot of change has been more activity driven versus impact driven. Yeah. So see, there is so much to be done that the only way you can do it is if you can get like a virtuous cycle going. You do something that has a positive impact, and it makes future change more acceptable and easy to do. That's the only way of doing it, because else you will be like pushing a very big rock up the mountain. It will keep on coming back at you. Yeah. Now, how do you build that positive momentum? You build that through real wins, which are real wins for your customer, and which show an impact in your business, in your bottom line. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest, that you have to the best way of starting is with the customer pain point, is with a real problem which the customer feels. You anchor on that, and you have a KPI around it. Yeah. And then you say, okay, hey, what is all that I need to do, whether it is in terms of my experience, in terms of the data needed to deliver that experience, the systems needed to make all of this happen. Let me get all of that right. Yeah. So I get that one thing done. There is a real impact. And once I do that, then I do the next thing. Yeah. And these things add up, and I kind of have a way of bringing it together. Yeah. Because again, as a technologist, I have to confess that every technologist will say Now, you first need to get all of this data together. You get this data together, then you create like this customer 360-degree view, which will tell you all that you need to know about the customer. Sounds great, will never work. Will never work because the amount of data is constantly exploding. So how do you get it together? You can spend like and some of the big banks that we work with have go on like these multi-year programs, end up spending hundreds of millions of dollars and then write it off because that never works. So the only way, in my experience, it will work is there is one true north here, which is the end customer. That's the true north. Start with that a pain point for the customer, have a real KPI behind it, and then work through the stack.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much.